Rick's voice crackled through the phone, his tone a familiar blend of exasperation and panic. He informed Leo that the consensus online, from TMZ to the most obscure gossip blogs, was that he and Ethan Hayes had a feud brewing. The industry was buzzing about it. A link popped up on Leo's screen, a compilation from a high-profile entertainment columnist. It contained a dozen or more paparazzi shots and red carpet screen grabs. There was one of Leo seeing the veteran actor and immediately spinning on his heel. Another showed Leo's smile dissolving the moment Ethan stepped onto a stage. The internet had already coined a term for it, summarizing that whenever Leo Vance was near Ethan Hayes, his hearing dropped by 100% and his walking speed doubled. The comments section was a battlefield. One user noted they knew the two weren't close, but hadn't realized it was this hostile. Another wondered how two actors signed to the same talent agency could let things get so toxic. A particularly cutting comment suggested Leo Vance was getting arrogant after one moderately successful indie film. Leo protested to his agent, feigning innocence. He reminded Rick that it was Rick himself who had warned him that Ethan Hayes was volatile and best avoided. Besides, their respective fanbases had just declared war on Twitter over a shared nickname, a conflict so intense it nearly crashed the platform's servers. Ethan's fans had even launched a campaign demanding Leo change his official fan club name. The memory still stung, making him recall the defiant tweet he had posted in a fit of pique. "My name is my name, Leo Vance." Of course, Rick had made him delete it within minutes. Rick's voice pulled him sharply back to the present, questioning if Leo's avoidance was less about following advice and more about making a statement. Leo let out a long, drawn-out sigh, remarking that if that was how Rick wanted to see it, there was nothing he could do. A long-suffering groan came from the other end of the line. Leo rubbed his temples, the headache already starting. He asked what fresh hell of an apology tour was required this time. A long-form essay on his notes app or a tearful video. Rick was silent for a moment before outlining a different strategy. He thought a formal apology would seem too calculated. Instead, he suggested that Leo should start interacting more with Ethan's posts on social media. Interaction. Leo was skeptical, wondering aloud if that wouldn't just make him look like a desperate sycophant. Rick scoffed, pointing out that since they were with the same agency, it couldn't be called sycophantic. It was, at worst, leveraging another's popularity. Leo dryly thanked him for the clarification. Leo's greatest strength was his ability to follow a clear directive. Since his agent had laid out a path, he saw no reason to waste energy forging his own. As if on cue, Ethan Hayes' official account posted new material. It was a bonus video celebrating his latest film crossing the $100 million mark at the box office. A concession to his massive online following, it was exactly the kind of thirst trap content the man himself would never post. A high contrast. Black and white photo from a gym, his sculpted abdomen slick with sweat, followed by a short clip of his muscles contracting under the strain of a workout. The moody lighting and pulsating background music made the whole thing feel intensely intimate. Though the shot was fleeting, it had sent his fans into a frenzy. The comments were explosive. One declared that as long as Ethan had those abs, the world was safe. Another asked if they were even legally allowed to view such content. Remembering Rick's instructions, Leo navigated to the comment box and, without a second thought, typed, "I think there's something between us." He thought it was brilliant. Not only was it an interaction, but the phrasing also implied a level of intimacy. A second later, his comment was flooded with hundreds of replies. People asked if it was really him or if his account had been hacked. Someone else remarked that for two people who were supposedly not on speaking terms, they seemed to be on very familiar terms indeed. The word something was dissected and analyzed. Fans demanded he elaborate. A few cold case shippers, who had long believed the supposed animosity was a cover-up, declared their obscure pairing had finally become canon. Leo felt a brief sense of gratitude for these fans who would ship anything, even if it was to their own detriment. In any case, he had completed Rick's task. He was about to screenshot the evidence when a new notification appeared. A reply from Ethan Hayes himself? At this hour, he should have been on set filming. Apparently, Leo wasn't the only one slacking off. The comment section erupted again. One user, a self-proclaimed literature major, analyzed how the single punctuation mark vividly conveyed the actor's speechless confusion, setting the stage for their future conflict. Another joked that Leo had shocked Ethan so badly he'd forgotten how to type. Some of Ethan's more protective fans began expressing their distaste for a fellow male celebrity who lacked a sense of boundaries. Someone worried about the psychological trauma this must be inflicting on the famously private actor. A lone voice wondered if maybe Ethan was gay too, only to be immediately shot down by another user who offered their own head on a platter if that were the case. When Rick called back, his voice was thick with unshed tears. He wailed that he had told Leo to squash the feud rumors, not start a whole new set of them. As he watched their names rocket to the top of the trending charts, Leo belatedly grasped the gravity of the situation. He tried to shift the blame, reminding Rick it was his idea. The background noise on Rick's end was chaotic. Leo could hear other agents shouting about the servers crashing again. Rick managed to choke out that yes, it was his idea, and now his career was about to be the thing that was finished. He demanded to know who on earth told Leo to comment something like that. Leo asked if he should just delete it now. Rick screamed that it was too late. It was everywhere, and deleting it would only make it worse. This was Hollywood, not his personal playground. Nothing was the right move. Rick told him to apologize to Ethan directly, relaying a rumor that Ethan had seen the comment on set and flubbed his lines several times. Leo grumbled to himself about how Ethan's acting ability was hardly his fault. Still, he agreed. He opened his direct messages, pasted a generic apology he'd copied from the internet, and was about to hit send when another notification flashed. A new comment on the original post, from Ethan. Took you long enough to admit it. The collective circuits of the internet, along with Leo's own brain, fried simultaneously. Admit what? What had he possibly admitted to? Rick's subsequent phone call was a study in emotional whiplash. The frantic background noise was completely drowned out by his booming laughter. He declared Leo a lucky son of a bitch. He had actually managed to latch onto Ethan Hayes' fame. Leo muttered that Rick's triumphant snorts were probably powerful enough to achieve escape velocity. Rick, high on the sudden turn of events, confessed that he'd sent Ethan's team a Hail Mary of a PR proposal. A last-ditch effort he never expected them to accept. He'd assumed Ethan would let Leo twist in the wind and take the full force of the media backlash. Instead, Ethan had agreed to a win-win solution. Leo was confused, asking what the solution was. Rick's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. At this point, the only way to save Leo's career was to make it official. An official announcement. He told Leo to get ready for a major career upgrade. This was unacceptable. It was a matter of dignity. Rick was too blinded by the prospect of a rising star to see reason. His joy practically audible through the phone. Leo knew he had to handle this himself. He got the address for Ethan's film set and knew he had to get there before sundown. The set was a whirlwind of crew members moving with purpose. The director spotted him, a flicker of confusion on his face until an assistant whispered something in his ear. The director's expression cleared and he walked over. He asked if Leo was there to make a declaration. The look he gave Leo was heavy with meaning. Leo started to deny it, but the director cut him off with a knowing smile, saying he understood. It wasn't a declaration. Wink wink. It was hopeless. Explaining would get him nowhere. He let his shoulders slump in defeat. The director pointed toward a large private trailer, mentioning that Ethan was inside and that they had plenty of time before his night shoot at 8. Leo rubbed his sweaty palms together, determined to clear the air with the actor. He pulled open the trailer door. Ethan Hayes was stretched out on a daybed, eyes closed. Leo spoke softly, his voice barely a whisper, greeting the senior actor. Ethan's eyes slowly opened, his gaze sweeping over Leo's face with a detached curiosity. He asked who he was. Leo introduced himself. At the name, Ethan's brow furrowed slightly, as if searching a distant memory. After a long moment, he made a small sound of recognition and stated that Leo must be there to discuss the official announcement, directing him to speak with his agent. Leo quickly clarified that he was there to do the opposite, to set the record straight. Ethan's frown deepened. He said that Leo had started the rumor, and Leo's team had proposed the PR strategy. Leo hung his head, unable to speak. He knew his actions had created a negative situation, and he wanted to prevent it from spiraling further by telling the public the truth. The trailer door opened and Ethan's agent, Mark, walked in. He finished Leo's thought for him, asking if he was willing to tell the truth even if it meant being blacklisted. He explained that in these situations, regardless of the truth, one party is usually sacrificed to quell the scandal. Otherwise, the rumor would haunt the other person's career forever. Mark didn't have to say which one of them would be the sacrifice. Even though they were with the same agency, the disparity in their star power was obvious. The situation felt increasingly like a trap with no exit. Mark continued, suggesting that it would be better to lean into it and make a bold statement. With the cultural climate shifting, being the first major gay couple in the industry to go public could be a groundbreaking move for both their careers. Ethan finally stirred, his eyes opening to see the miserable, cornered expression on Leo's face. A rare flicker of amusement crossed his features. He promised he wouldn't take advantage of the situation. Leo looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes, asking if he was serious. Ethan nodded. Leo chewed his lip for a moment before conceding. As Leo was leaving, Mark remarked to Ethan that he'd never seen someone so reluctant to be paired with him, asking whatever happened to his reputation for being universally desired. Ethan just told his agent not to tease him. Shortly after Leo left the set, new headlines began to appear. They screamed about Leo and Ethan's late-night rendezvous, heralding the arrival of Hollywood's first A-list gay power couple. The internet theorized that Leo had spent over an hour in Ethan's trailer. Speculation ran rampant about what they could have possibly done in that time. The fanfiction writers were already hard at work. One popular post imagining Leo, blushing, telling Ethan their relationship had been discovered. He tried to break it off to protect Ethan's career, but Ethan, ever the dominant force, would have none of it. He'd pressed Leo into the mattress, murmuring that he couldn't talk about breaking up if he was too tired to speak. One commenter enthusiastically encouraged the author to write more. The comments section was completely derailed. Rick called, his voice laced with smugness. He said he'd wondered where Leo had disappeared to, and now he knew. He thought it was good they were getting acquainted so it wouldn't look forced when the company made them collaborate. A knot formed in Leo's stomach. He asked what collaboration. Rick explained that the agency, seeing the economic potential, had decided to capitalize on the buzz by placing them on a celebrity couple's reality show. Before filming began, Leo would need to memorize a dossier on Ethan's likes and dislikes. Leo responded with a flat "oh," adding that he was already well acquainted with them. Rick noted his lack of enthusiasm, finding it strange since Leo was usually so complimentary about other actors. He pointed out that Ethan had the looks, the talent, and the reputation. He asked, wasn't Ethan Hayes the ultimate dream guy for someone like Leo? Without thinking, Leo blurted out, but he's not a top. Rick's silence was heavy. How would you know that? He asked, his voice sharp. Leo realized he'd been tricked. Rick pressed on, asking if they knew each other from before. Leo answered sullenly that he knew him, but Ethan didn't know him. Ignoring Leo's frustration, Rick's voice lifted with excitement, declaring that this was even better. Leo thought it was the opposite of better. Rick was practically cackling, telling Leo that everyone at the agency was reading the fanfiction about them and that he should check it out to get into character. Leo forced a laugh and quickly hung up. Knowing Rick's personality, he had probably already been in touch with Ethan's team the moment the news broke, leaving Leo with nothing to do. Lying in bed, unable to sleep, his mind drifted to the fanfiction that was now reportedly over 100 chapters long. He decided one little look wouldn't hurt. The story he found, via a link from Rick, began at a pace that left him blushing. He couldn't believe this stuff was allowed on the internet. He was particularly offended by a scene where he was portrayed as crying. He scoffed. Even if he were a bottom, he would never cry. Absolutely not. He saw Ethan Hayes again a month later on the set of the reality show Heartbeat. In the intervening weeks, their only contact had been carefully curated public interactions on their official social media accounts. This, however, hadn't stopped their ship from becoming the most popular in the industry. The fanfiction had swelled to over 1,000 chapters, and there was now a popular comic adaptation. He'd seen panels of himself straddling Ethan, yanking on his tie as Ethan kissed his throat. Another depicted a post-shower Ethan, his robe accidentally pulled open by a mischievous cat, revealing everything. Rick had never managed an actor who had successfully latched onto a star of Ethan's caliber. On the first day of filming, he arrived early with Leo, walking him through the set and giving him a litany of last-minute instructions. He concluded by pulling up the latest chapter of the fan comic on his phone. He said he knew their fans would go crazy if they didn't have some real, tangible interaction. He pointed to the screen, remarking on how the artists were constantly pushing the boundaries of censorship, and that he feared their entire fanbase might end up behind bars. Leo glanced at the screen and noted dryly that Rick hadn't missed a single chapter. Rick coughed, changing the subject. He informed Leo that the agency planned for them to officially announce their relationship after the show wrapped, so he needed to ramp up the interaction. Leo assured him he understood. Rick added that the blush currently creeping up Leo's neck was the perfect look to maintain. Leo snapped back that he wasn't blushing, he was just hot. A sleek black car pulled up, and Ethan Hayes emerged. His impossibly long legs appeared first, followed by the man himself, looking effortlessly stunning in a simple black shirt that was elevated to high fashion by his flawless face. Leo's courage evaporated. He turned to run, but Rick grabbed the back of his collar with surprising strength, yanking him back and pushing him towards Ethan. Leo mumbled a polite greeting to Mr. Hayes, feeling like a child being forced to greet a distant relative at a holiday gathering. Ethan's lips curved into a slight smile. He observed that Mr. Vance didn't seem very happy to be there today. Leo stretched his lips into a painful grimace, insisting he was thrilled, absolutely ecstatic. Ethan chuckled, remarking that he could tell. The smile was so disarmingly handsome that Leo's grimace faltered. He was struck by the unfairness of it all. How could two male actors be so vastly different? As Ethan walked away, Rick sighed, reminding Leo that he was a professional actor and needed to work on his facial expressions. The first task was simple. Mr. Hayes and Mr. Vance were to cook dinner together. The ingredients were provided, but there was a catch. Leo had to choose the ingredients without consulting Ethan, and during the cooking process, Leo was forbidden from offering any guidance. This meant that whatever Ethan cooked with the ingredients Leo chose, he would have to eat it. Leo leaned in and whispered to Ethan, asking if his cooking was even edible. Ethan ignored the question and asked one of his own. "Do you know what I don't eat?" Of course, he knew. Ethan Hayes was notoriously picky. It was a miracle the man was 6'3". As per the show's rules, Ethan went to the kitchen first. Leo surveyed the spread of ingredients. The proteins included chicken, duck, fish, and oysters. The vegetables were a mix of lettuce, arugula, and other greens, along with a controversial root he knew Ethan loathed. The aromatics included onions, ginger, garlic, and cilantro. The producers were clearly trying to stir up drama. Excluding the things Ethan wouldn't touch left very few options. After a moment of consideration, Leo selected the chicken, the oysters, the arugula, the hated root, the onions, and a large bunch of cilantro. From the sidelines, he could see Rick jumping up and down, frantically mouthing that Ethan didn't eat any of those things. Leo simply looked away. The large screen on set switched to a live feed of the kitchen. Ethan had tied on an apron, his sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. He handled the wok with a practiced ease that was surprisingly domestic, despite the cold, impassive expression on his face. Of course he was annoyed. He was surrounded by all his least favorite foods. With the cameras focused on Ethan, Leo snuck a look at his phone. The live comments were already rolling in. One person was fantasizing about Ethan being their house husband. Another added that it would be even better if he wore just the apron. Someone else replied, telling them to check out the latest fan art update, which featured just that. Leo liked the comment and asked where he could find it. He was immediately invited to a private fan group, the fifth of its kind since the previous four had reached their member caps. The group's files contained the very latest and censored fan comics. He quickly downloaded them for later. As the sun began to set, the aroma of food filled the air. Ethan removed his apron and returned to the dining table where the other celebrity guests were already seated. Leo took a large bite of the dish Ethan had prepared and exclaimed that his cooking was excellent. One of the other guests asked Ethan why he wasn't eating. Ethan just moved the serving dish closer to Leo, stating that he was a picky eater and that Leo had spoiled him. He then added that he rarely ate dinner anyway and excused himself to get some wine. As soon as Ethan was gone, one of the other contestants leaned in and asked Leo if he had really managed to land Ethan Hayes. Leo gave a vague, non-committal answer. The guest pressed further, her eyes wide with gossip, asking what it was like to date him, and if he was any good in bed. Leo feigned a thoughtful expression and said that, honestly, he was just average. He then added with a smirk, "But I'm amazing." The other contestants exchanged knowing looks and suppressed their laughter. Ethan returned with a bottle of wine, asking what was so funny. A female guest, hiding her smile behind her hand, told him that Leo had just been boasting about how good he was. Leo felt his face flush, mortified that they'd repeated it. He didn't dare look at Ethan, knowing how much he hated being the subject of crude jokes. But then, a calm voice from above him said, "Yes, he is." The others ducked their heads, trying to stifle their giggles. With the wine flowing, the mood lightened. The conversation turned to past relationships and personal philosophies on love. Leo's alcohol tolerance was low, and after a few glasses, the world started to swim. He saw two Ethans shimmering in front of him. When another guest proposed a toast, he instinctively raised his glass, only to find it gone. He fumbled for it, his hand closing around a can of milk, He looked up, confused. The other guests were laughing. He turned to Ethan, who simply pointed to his own lips. Leo felt a surge of childish annoyance. He whined that Ethan was acting like a grade schooler, stealing his drink. Ethan's voice was low and firm. "Drink less." Leo pouted, refusing. Fueled by wine, he stared at Ethan's lips, suddenly finding them irritating. In one swift movement, he leaned forward, closed the distance between them, and bit down gently. He licked his own lips, murmuring that it tasted sweet. The laughter around the table abruptly stopped. That was the last thing he remembered. He woke up the next morning in a massive bed, next to a shirtless Ethan Hayes, with a complete gap in his memory. He squeezed his eyes shut, convinced he was still dreaming. After confirming he was, in fact, awake, he forced himself to accept the reality of the situation. His last memory was of kissing Ethan. He reasoned that being drunk was a valid excuse. No one holds a grudge against someone for what they do when they're intoxicated, right? Still, his eyes betrayed him, drifting to the expanse of toned muscle beside him. He swallowed hard. His own clothes were wrinkled but still on. Nothing seemed out of place. After a long session of self-reassurance, he gathered the courage to climb out of bed. An arm snaked around his waist, pulling him back. Ethan's voice was thick with sleep. "It's early. Sleep more." He shifted closer, his face pressed into the pillow, eyes still closed. It was the same face that had captivated him completely back in college. His heart began to pound. He shook his head, trying to dislodge the foolish, romantic thoughts. A cool voice cut through his panic. "You're shaking your head so early. Still drunk?" Ethan was awake. Leo scrambled back, demanding to know why they were in the same bed. Ethan pressed his fingers to his temples as if trying to recall the events. Leo grew frantic, grabbing his broad shoulders and shaking him, pleading for an answer. Ethan coughed, explaining that they had both had too much to drink and the staff must have brought them back to their room. The bed was enormous, yet they were both lying in the very middle, pressed close together. A terrible suspicion bloomed in Leo's mind. He asked if they had been put in the same bed. Ethan's expression was strangely calm as he replied, asking if Rick hadn't told him that they would be sharing a room for the duration of the show. Leo's mind went blank. Rick had said no such thing. While Leo was reeling, Ethan was already getting out of bed. Leo grabbed his arm, his voice tight with anxiety, asking if he had done anything untoward the night before. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "If you did, would you take responsibility?" Leo's throat went dry. He mumbled that he had blacked out and couldn't remember anything. Ethan chuckled softly, saying he had as well, and that perhaps they should drink less next time. Leo cautiously peeked under the covers. His pants were still on. He breathed a sigh of relief. When he looked up, he was met with the sight of Ethan's broad-shouldered, narrow-waisted torso. An image flashed in his mind, unbidden. A large hand resting on the curve of his spine, fingers tracing the edge of his shoulder blade, a sensation so vivid it made him shiver. He jolted, realizing he must have dreamed it. Ethan turned his back to him to pull on a fresh shirt. When he faced Leo again, his brow furrowed. "You have a nosebleed." Leo touched his face, saw the smear of red on his hand, and the world went black. The last thing he muttered before losing consciousness was that he was afraid of blood. When he woke up, he was alone in the bed. He could hear Ethan and Rick talking just outside the door. Rick was saying something about him passing out twice in one night and how impressive that was. He heard Ethan's low voice reply that Leo was squeamish about blood. Rick asked where the blood had come from. Ethan replied that it was a nosebleed. The conversation was hazy. Then he heard Rick sigh and tell Ethan that even if he was pursuing Leo, he needed to dial it back a bit, that he couldn't be so indulgent, it wasn't healthy. Pursuing him? Leo's mind reeled. This was a misunderstanding. He threw back the covers to go and explain, but then he heard Ethan's quiet reply from the doorway. I know. He had agreed with him. Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. He scrambled back into bed just as Ethan pushed open the door. Their eyes met, and in that moment, an unspoken understanding passed between them. He had known Ethan in college. Ethan was a senior, he was a junior. A single glance across the basketball court was all it took for Leo to become completely infatuated. He had obsessively gathered every piece of information he could find about him. Ethan was the campus heartthrob, with entire online forums dedicated to his existence. There, Leo found a community of people who admired him just as much. He learned that Ethan had never been in a relationship and had never expressed a specific sexual preference, which gave Leo a sliver of hope. He decided he had to confess his feelings. Worried that his confession might make Ethan uncomfortable, he wrote a letter and gave it to one of Ethan's friends to deliver. 2 days later, the letter was returned to him, unopened. Scrawled across the envelope in Ethan's familiar handwriting were 2 words: disgusting. The friend who had returned it told him that Ethan hated gay people and that he should leave him alone. Leo did as he was asked. He never approached Ethan again, deliberately avoiding any place he might be, even as he couldn't stop himself from secretly following his career. Now, in the quiet of the room, Ethan closed the door. He walked to the bedside and asked softly if Leo was feeling better. Leo didn't answer. He had been prepared to play a part, to go through the motions of this fake relationship and finally put his old crush to rest. But this complication had thrown everything off course. Ethan's voice was gentle. You seem to really dislike me. Lying with his back to him, Leo replied that dislike wasn't the right word. Ethan asked if there was a reason. Leo said there wasn't. He heard Ethan give a bitter, self-deprecating laugh, asking when Leo had forgotten how to use his words. Leo retorted coldly that Ethan had also kept things from him, and questioned how much of this whole reality show setup had been orchestrated by him. Ethan's only reply was an apology. The room fell silent again. Ethan finally broke the silence, asking if Leo knew him so well because he used to be a fan, or if they had met before. Ethan would have already seen his file. He would know they went to the same university. Leo decided to play along, stating that they had been at the same college, that Ethan had been a senior when he was a junior. Ethan pressed on, asking what he could have possibly done to earn such animosity. Had he stolen a girl Leo liked? Was Leo not actually into men? Leo threw back the covers and sat up, meeting his gaze directly. I like men, he said, his voice firm. I just don't like you anymore. Ethan's expression softened. Stubbornness isn't a good look. Leo, you avoided me in college. You avoided me in high school. What did I do that was so awful? The words tumbled out of Leo before he could stop them. He asked if Ethan was okay with gay people now, if he was no longer repulsed by them. Because if so, why had he written disgusting on that envelope? A flicker of realization crossed Ethan's face. You received that? He explained that he hadn't known the letter was from Leo. At the time, he was being relentlessly pursued by another guy, the same friend who delivered the letter, and it had severely disrupted his life. When that friend handed him the envelope, he had assumed it was from him. Leo's mind connected the dots. That's why the friend had been so eager to tell him Ethan hated gay people. To eliminate the competition. Later, to escape the unwanted attention, Ethan had left college early to pursue his acting career. Leo started to laugh. He had invented 1,000 excuses for Ethan over the years, but he had never imagined the truth would be so simple. Ethan's gaze was intense. "So, can you stop disliking me now?" The heat in his eyes was making it hard for Leo to breathe. He deflected, changing the subject, asking if they didn't have any tasks to film that day. Ethan told him the producers wanted him to rest for the day. And him? Ethan said he would be resting as well. Leo told him to go ahead and that he would sleep. But Ethan didn't move. Seeing Leo's confusion, he explained that there was only one room, so if they were resting, they would be resting together. Before Leo could protest, Ethan's fingers went to his tie, loosening it with a single pull. Then he began to unbutton his shirt. Leo instinctively covered his eyes, but he couldn't resist peeking through the gaps in his fingers. One by one, the buttons came undone, the fabric falling open to reveal the perfectly defined muscles beneath. Ethan turned his back, shrugged the shirt off, and the next thing Leo knew, the comforter was pulled over his head. Ethan's voice was muffled through the fabric. "I was afraid you'd get another nosebleed. If you pass out a third time, it will be very difficult to explain." They drew a clear line down the middle of the bed with a barricade of pillows. Leo couldn't sleep, so he stayed under the covers, catching up on the fanfiction and comics he'd saved. He was completely absorbed when a head suddenly appeared next to him. "What are you reading?" Leo yelped and slammed his phone screen off. He stammered that it was just a novel. Ethan chuckled, a low, knowing sound. He asked what kind of novel was so explicit. Leo insisted he'd seen it wrong. The amusement in Ethan's eyes only deepened. He suggested Leo share it with him. Leo adamantly refused. Some things were meant to be enjoyed alone. He quickly finished the saved chapters and switched to his anonymous account to check the fan group for updates. The chat was flooded with messages. Everyone was talking about the previous night's broadcast. There were screenshots of a drunken Leo clinging to Ethan, kissing him. Fans were demanding fan art of the scene. Someone had posted a close-up of Ethan's face during the kiss, analyzing his sober, indulgent expression as proof of his love. They also noted that neither of them had appeared on camera all day, and that other contestants had mentioned Leo had fainted. The speculation was wild, with fans wondering if things had gotten so intense that he'd literally passed out from the excitement. He had completely forgotten they were being filmed before they went back to their room. He quickly searched for the clip. It was all there. His drunken antics were truly second to none. The footage ended with him, completely exhausted, collapsing into Ethan's arms and being carried back to their room. He emerged from under the covers, his face burning, and glared at Ethan. "You lied to me." Ethan glanced at Leo's phone screen, the fan chat still visible. "I was trying to save you from social suicide." Leo dove back under the comforter, groaning that everyone had already seen it and he could never show his face in public again. Ethan pulled back the covers and gently patted his head, telling him to hide all he wanted, but that he was going to get him some food, since he hadn't eaten all day. Leo spent the rest of the day holed up in the room. Aside from Ethan bringing him meals, he saw no one. But he was dying of curiosity about the other contestants, so when Ethan returned that evening, he pestered him for updates on the show's other budding romances. Ethan recounted the day's events, then added that several other couples had also made some progress the previous night, so Leo shouldn't worry so much about his own drunken display. He finished by saying that Leo was actually quite cute when he was drunk, implying that their own relationship had also progressed. Leo grabbed a pillow and threw it at him, telling him to go to sleep before he ended up on the trending charts again for having dark circles under his eyes. Ethan laughed softly and turned off the light. In the darkness, his voice was a low, magnetic whisper. "Leo, will you reconsider me?" It was their last day on the show. The contestants decided to exchange gifts as a farewell gesture. The fanfiction he'd been following had also reached its final chapter, with the fictional versions of him and Ethan getting their happy ending. As he watched the fans in the group chat say their goodbyes to the story, a wave of melancholy washed over him. During their time on the show, Ethan had been so close enough to make him forget the vast difference in their careers. To forget that he was a world-famous actor and Leo was still struggling to find his footing. For a moment, he had allowed himself to imagine that something real between them was possible. But once the show ended, Ethan would return to his pedestal, and Leo would be left at the bottom of the mountain. The gap between them was a reality he couldn't ignore. That evening, they held a farewell bonfire party. During the gift exchange, Leo gave small presents to each of the contestants. Finally, he approached Ethan and handed him a small box filled with paper stars he had folded back in college. On the lid, he had drawn a single blue whale. He explained that whales see more stars than any other creature, living in the vast ocean with a limitless future before them. But for a whale to love something that wasn't of its kind was incredibly difficult. Their environments, the very air they breathed, everything was an obstacle. To even meet, the whale would have to leave its ocean and venture close to the shore. Ethan took the box, his gaze fixed on the drawing for a long time. One of the other contestants asked how they had first met. Ethan answered, his eyes never leaving Leo's. "We met my senior year of college." He then said Leo's name and held up 3 letters. One of them was agonizingly familiar, except the 2 cruel words on the front had been blacked out. He handed the other 2 letters to Leo. "Same time, same place, same love at first sight." He said, "I love you. Will you be with me?" Leo's heart stopped. He looked at the 2 letters, written on the same stationery he had used for his own confession all those years ago, and then back into Ethan's eyes, which reflected only him. Suddenly, all his anxieties about their different worlds and career statuses seemed utterly ridiculous. To hell with the gap between them. He was going to be with him. Amid the cheers of the other contestants, Leo surged forward and kissed Ethan Hayes. "Then I guess we didn't miss our chance after all." From Ethan's first unsent letter, "The moment the world becomes more tolerant, you are the person I want to announce to everyone. I am not afraid of public opinion, but I cannot ignore its effect on you. I have always believed, always waited, for the day when they no longer look at us as different. When we can be like any other couple, boldly telling the world of our love. When we won't have to hide our hands or turn away from cameras to kiss. When we can kiss under the setting sun and hold hands under the flashbulbs." From Ethan's second unsent letter, "Our love for each other should be pure. So pure that neither of us has to sacrifice our reputation or our career for the other. Gender, status, and any other difference, none of it matters in the face of love. Love is about standing side by side. Love allows people to stand side by side.